The 2024-25 college basketball regular season is over for the Sun Devils in what was single-handedly the worst season in program history.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode, it's sponsored by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet as long as it wins. Go to FanDuel to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, the regular season is over for the Sun Devils, and it was the worst one ever. Between the expectations, between the transfer to new conference, and between the never-ending drama. It was a hard season for ASU basketball. That is all coming up on today's show. The expectations for this team, look, I myself had pretty high expectations. I don't know if there's an ASU fan out there that had low expectations for Sun Devils basketball. I think that the majority of us went into this season saying we are expecting this program to finally take a step forward. And I don't think that there was any reason that we should have expected anything less. Let's start off with the reason why our expectations were higher, and that's because this recruiting class was dummy good. Two of the three highest recruited players since recruiting was tracked in the history of the ASU Sun Devils basketball program, Jayden Quaintance, the number 1, and Joson, Sanon, the number 3, were both brought in. Same offseason. Quaintance, someone who has to play 2 years of collegiate basketball, and he is knocking on superstardom. Joson, Sanon, pretty darn good too. And then you had Amir Ali, who was another top 100 recruit in the nation. And then you have this insane transfer class that comes in. A 4-star transfer in BJ Freeman, a 4-star transfer in Alston Mason, a former 4-star recruit in Brandon Gardner, a former 4-star recruit in Austin Nunez, and then 3-star transfer Bashir Jihad, who was one of the most important players for ASU this year on the basketball court. Like, this was... Oh, and by the way, Trevor Best, who was supposed to be in next year's recruiting class, yeah, he was able to reclassify because he graduated high school in the winter, and he joined the team halfway through the season. And then over the last handful of games, he has become a huge contributing factor to this team. Like, there was so much that was supposed to go right for ASU. You also got to remember that this was Bobby Hurley's 10th season. This is when everything was supposed to come together. We were finally getting everything on track, and there's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs during Hurley's time at ASU. And we've only been to the tournament 3 times, technically. As far as I'm concerned, you've been twice, because I do not count the first 4 out. That's just my personal opinion. They are 2-1 in the first 4 out. In the round of 64, they're 0-2. So that's not a great resume for postseason basketball, if you would even count it as a resume. 3 appearances in 10 seasons. That's disgusting. He is well below a 500 mark in conference play. And we are going to talk about the move to the Big 12 conference coming up a little bit later on the show. But this was supposed to be everything coming together. All of these frustrating seasons were finally going to pay off. Look at this recruiting class. It's absolutely insane. Like, it was a recruiting class that stacks up with some of the better classes across the country. Like, it was a better recruiting class than the Arizona Wildcats had. Do you realize how bananas that is to say? ASU out-recruited the Arizona Wildcats, a program that is on an annual basis a contender in college basketball. They are a great program. You can call it what it is. I have been facetious about them in the past. I will continue to be so, but for the sake of this episode, like, ASU was able to out-recruit them. That's insane. I don't know if that's ever happened before in the history of tracking recruits, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. I do not know if that's ever happened before. It was the year that everything was supposed to come together. Oh, by the way, NIL was catching up a little bit. Bobby Hurley has that docuseries that brings in a few $1 million. And then Joson Sanon has some endorsement deal that is able to bring in some money. And now, very recently, James Harden donates a 6-figure amount to the ASU's Sun Angel Collective for their NIL. And now James Harden has come out and he has said, if money is the problem for ASU basketball, then allow me to be the one who fixes that. Are you kidding me? One of the greatest guards in the history of the NBA and a former MVP and a proud alum of Arizona State has flat out said, look, this continues to be a problem and I will be a part of the solution if that's what it needs, if that's what it takes. Hell yes, James. We need all the help we can get right now. This was the team, man. Look at this recruiting class. Look at these transfers. You also had 2 key returners as well, because you had Adam Miller, who was a starter for you last year, and you had Sean Phillips, who was your lone big man last year. And guess what? Both of them grew into very large roles this year. Adam Miller becomes arguably the MVP of this team. Sean Phillips Jr. is able to step in to starting roles when some of the injuries start to mount up. And he just looked really good. Phillips has another year, by the way. I am really hoping that he returns to ASU for his senior season. I think that'd be a really good situation for him. By the way, speaking of guys returning, Bobby Hurley has a really realistic chance to get fired. And I know a lot of people are ready to move on from him. If he is fired, I don't expect anyone from this roster to return. This is something I talked about in more detail on yesterday's live. Yeah, by the way, we go live on the weekends, so make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube so that you can get that notification. But I talked about that in a lot more detail yesterday as to whether or not Bobby Hurley could or should return for next year. So definitely check that one out as your second listen. This was the team, man. This was it. This was the one. The stars were supposed to align for ASU basketball. 2 5-stars, a super high 4-star, a kid from a future recruiting class that's able to join you. 2 key contributors from last year's team that are able to return in massive roles. 2 4-star transfers. Another 3-star transfer who ends up being a full-time starter. He's the only one who played every game, by the way. That comes up towards the end of the show when we talk about the drama that happened. It was all there. It was all there. It was the first basketball season under Graham Rossini, who has just completely re-energized and reinvigorated a fan base that has been up and down because the program has been up and down. And not just basketball, like football got reintegrated. Baseball is on the upswing. Like they have found ways to awaken the sleeping giant that ASU has been called for years. And that has referred to football more often than not. But why can't it affect other sports? And now that the NIL is pooling in, look at this. Like ASU is getting guys here. Recruiting has never been an issue for Bobby Hurley. He's got 17 or 18 of the top 25 highest recruits in the program's history. Recruiting is not an issue. This year's recruiting class was beyond exceptional, though, and he did nothing with it. There's stuff that contributed to it. Nothing more than injuries. Talk about that later in the show, though. Right now, you just look at the expectations that this team had. You look at everything that was returning for ASU. You look at everything that was coming into the program for ASU, and they did nothing with it. Zip, zilch, nada. Not a single thing. 4-12 in conference play. One of the ugliest seasons that ASU has ever had. In fact, that's the whole point of this show. This was the worst season that ASU has ever had. You can go ahead and look at the winning percentages of seasons before this, and you will notice, like, ASU was still like in the 400s. Like, there's seasons that are under 300 for winning percentage, to which I would say, yeah, those are miserable seasons. But you know what? This was a worse season. And the reason why we start off Why is this the worst season? Because the expectations and the talent was clearly present for this Sun Devils basketball team. But we also got to talk about why a fresh start in the Big 12 Conference should have also contributed to a much better season for the Sun Devils. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me talk about our friends over at Supply House. Get supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you on the job and get it done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from top 400 brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always be able to talk to a real person. And of course, if you are looking for that extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks with a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage right now, and it's your turn to do so. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends over at Wayfair. Your home should reflect your style, and with Wayfair, it's easier than ever to make that happen. You could be looking for a simple refresh, or you could be tackling a big home project, and Wayfair is the place that has everything you need all in one place. Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find the perfect piece no matter your space or your budget. From cozy furniture and stylish decor to kitchen essentials and outdoor must-haves, Wayfair has it all, and at prices that fit your budget. You can find exactly what you're looking for. I am currently redoing my home right now, and I am looking to bring my living room together, and they've got everything that I am looking for to be able to bring everything up to my style. The site makes it simple to complete your styles, to compare your styles, and your order arrives fast with free delivery. I was surprised to find everything from storage solutions to patio decor, making it my go-to for all things home. Head over to wayfair.com right now and find something that's just your style today. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thanks as always for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. A new conference for ASU was supposed to be one of the contributing factors for why the program was going to make a rebound this season and give ASU a fresh start that they desperately needed. And that didn't work. The Big 12 Conference, in case you are unaware, is one of the best conferences for college basketball. It's actually insane, the amount of elite programs that are there. Kansas is there. That's a blue blood program. Houston's there. Houston has become one of the best programs in the country on an annual basis. Arizona's now joining. Arizona is routinely a contender. We already mentioned that. You've got teams like Texas Tech, who exploded this year. Iowa State, who exploded this year. BYU had a very quality season. Baylor has had more success than they've had failures during their time. It's a loaded conference. So ASU joining this conference, the first thing that you may think is, how is ASU supposed to compete with those programs? And I hear you, and that's a very, very realistic and important question to ask, because all those teams that I mentioned are championship caliber programs. ASU, they're not really there. They've never been there. In fact, for you to go into the season and say that ASU is a contending program for a national championship would have not just been insane, it would have been dumb. Call it what it is. That's just pure, flat ignorance. But this was the change. It was a fresh start for ASU. Decades of not being a good program in the Pac-10 and the Pac-12, being a bottom feeder in that conference. Like, sure, they had some solid seasons, never great seasons. And certainly in the 10 years that Bobby Hurley has been here, they've never been a standout program. Like, they've had seasons where they've gone to the tournament, but they make no noise when they get there. On a routine basis, ASU was bottom half of the Pac-12. Not quite a laughingstock, but I wouldn't blame you if you did have a good chuckle or two at the expense of this team, of this program, of this coach. It's right there for the taking. But now ASU is moving on. Fresh slate. Everything is in the past. First year in a new conference. First year in the conference for college basketball. Now, that may have been overtaken by the SEC, but you know what? The SEC is the SEC. They're very selfish and want everything for themselves. That's neither here nor there. This was the place. And not only that, like, look at the recruiting. The recruiting is only going to get better. Hopefully. It all depends on what happens over the next week and then moving forward. But in theory, ASU should be able to start recruiting even better. Look at the football program. They're recruiting better after moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. Now ASU basketball should be able to have that same opportunity. It's higher level play. It's an opportunity to be seen more than what you were previously with the Pac-12, where it was hard to find ASU basketball games, especially if you were out of market. If you didn't live in Arizona, you were having an insanely difficult time trying to watch Sun Devil games. Now it's a lot easier to be able to track down ASU. And with the talent that they have, like, there was a reason to tune into them this year. And they had marquee games. Like, no one is watching ASU versus Colorado, right? Now, you did have that in the Big 12, but in the Pac-12, that was one of the games that you had every single year. No one was watching that. No one was watching ASU versus Stanford, except a handful of years that the Cardinal were pretty good, or Cal or anything like that. But people are tuning in when ASU is playing Texas Tech, when they're playing Kansas, when they are playing Houston, when they're playing Iowa State. There were several games this year that brought the attention that ASU has needed to take a step forward. They got it. Sure, maybe you're watching for the other team, but you know what? A lot more people are interested in Kansas basketball than people are interested in Cal basketball. It was an opportunity for you to display yourself. It's a brand new slate. It's the conference. It was a chance to stand out in a dominant conference with a promising roster, with so much talent, with everything. You had the chance to display it all. Bobby Hurley had the chance to redefine his legacy and go from one of the most underachieving coaches in college basketball over the last decade into a guy who just needed a few things to change, go to a new conference, get some NIL going, and then nail a recruiting class. And maybe all of a sudden Bobby Hurley is changing his fortunes, and now he's becoming a fan favorite once again because he has been on the nerves of everybody, including this podcast host. It was the chance. And there were medium expectations for you too. Like, it's not like everyone was going into this year expecting Arizona State to be the worst basketball program, like they pretty much have been, and no one was expecting them to be the best basketball program. They were picked 11th. Okay? That is what it is. Like, ASU historically is not a good basketball program. Why would you pick them any higher in the conference for college basketball? But you know what? There were people that were like, hey, keep an eye on ASU. They got some kids out there. They got Jayden Quaintance. They got Joson Sanon. They got Alston Mason transferring in, and he was one of the more productive players in a non-Power 5 team. Like, whatever. You know what I mean? They had that chance, and they just botched it. So instead of capitalizing on these opportunities, a new conference, being able to display yourself, having the medium expectations, and being able to succeed them, you botched it. It was embarrassed routinely for this team. despite a top class, one of the best recruiting classes in the nation, they were consistently overmatched. They were consistently outpowered, out-physicaled. It even looked like they just had less talent. You had one of the highest rated recruits in the country with Jayden Quaintance. You had another top 25, top 30 5-star in Joson Sanon. And yet you're out there on the court and you're like, where's the guys? There's not enough player talent here. That shouldn't be the problem when you look at this team. In fact, this should be one of the strengths of the team is look at all the talent that's here. We just got to tap into it. And it's like, it was hard to find that sometimes. Yeah, guys would have great games. Jayden Quaintance would go off and Sanon and Ali would go off and you'd be like, yeah, they look like the recruits. You know, Alston Mason would go bananas and you're like, yeah, I see why he was highly touted in the transfer portal. But they couldn't do it on a consistent basis. And when they faced great teams, they crumbled. When they faced teams that they should have been around their level of play, they couldn't get it done. It was just flat out embarrassing. And instead of a chance to redefine the way people look at your program, you have solidified that you continue to be a bottom dweller. And now in a dominant basketball conference, that is guaranteed. You are going to go into next year. You could return every single player on this team. You could keep all of them and bring in a brand new head coach who recruits very well. There's going to be next to no expectations for this ASU basketball team, and there shouldn't be. There shouldn't be. This is just not a program that has shown nearly enough that they are going to move forward. And you are coming off a miserable season. If some might say the worst season in program history. Like this crazy podcast podcast host. Perhaps nothing else made this season as miserable as it was, however, compared to the endless amounts of drama that came with this team. That's coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything. That's buzzer beaters, that's Cinderella stories, even who's going to be cutting down the nets. I got my eyes on a few underdogs this year, certainly not Arizona State, and FanDuel is making it easy for me to get back into the action and pick some spreads and some totals and some game props even. And the tournament games are happening almost every day. There's going to be something exciting on for me, whether it's the conference games or whether it is March Madness itself. And the FanDuel app is simple to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. New customers, bet $5. If it wins, $200 in bonus bets is all yours. Just go to FanDuel.com to get started. You guys are the best. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first day. And a special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. All right. The drama that this team had this year might have contributed the most to why ASU was dreadful. This was an insane roster, man. So much talent, so many 4-stars, so many 4-stars, former 4-stars, so many veterans on this team, guys who were supposed to be able to lift everybody up, and they couldn't do it. Now, some of it was out of their control, and part of the biggest amount of drama here was ASU was just never healthy. I don't have the number in front of me. If someone can find how many different starting fives they had this year, it's definitely double digits. That's insane. They couldn't stay healthy. Everybody except one player, Bashir Jihad, missed at least one game. Jihad, he's played all 31. There's no reason for him to not play against Kansas State on Tuesday. By the way, tomorrow's episode is a crossover edition with Locked On Kansas State as we preview the game. So make sure that you tune into that and check out Locked On K-State and give my man Christian a little bit of sass for me. We got to talk to smack even though we're probably going to lose. Go down swinging. Jihad is probably going to play. Alston Mason, look, he's basically played every game this year. Now, he still dealt with injuries, and he missed one game, but that was an illness. And if Alston Mason is missing a game due to illness, I have to imagine that he is just in the worst place possible when it comes to being healthy. Like, I just imagine, I don't know, man. I don't want to get graphic and into details, but I can't imagine it is a pretty sight when you are looking at what is going on with Alston Mason when he was sick. But then Joson Sanon misses 5 games. He basically misses 6 games. Jayden Quaintance has missed 7 games and counting. I don't think he's going to play tomorrow night against Kansas State. I don't think there's anything for him to gain. Adam Miller's missed 3 games, including a suspension. Sean Phillips has missed 2 games. Austin Nunez missed 27 games. And some of the guys that you brought in flat out didn't see the court. We didn't see Brandon Gardner this year. It's just a shorthanded team all year long. There were points in time where ASU had 6 or less scholarship players that were available to go onto the court. I'm sorry. That's crazy, man. That can't happen. And again, it's out of your control, right? It's not something that Bobby Hurley was able to even anticipate. You can't anticipate injuries. And I've said multiple times that even guys who have like an injury history, I don't think it's fair to label them injury prone or just assume they're going to be injured unless it's someone that is just seriously like never healthy. Like they've never played a healthy season ever. Then yeah, you can probably justify that. But you just can't predict those. And it was tough, man. It was really tough this year. You just weren't able to overcome it. By the way, that wasn't even the biggest thing. There was legitimate drama on the court. ASU's game against U of A in Tempe got ugly. Adam Miller was ejected from the game, and BJ Freeman was ejected from the game. In case you don't remember, BJ Freeman was talking smack all game. I love it. I love smack talk. I've said before, it's great for sports. Not any sport. It's great. Great to have guys on the court, on the field, on the ice, wherever, that are talking smack to each other. I love some pushing and shoving. I love a good punch every once in a while. But there are lines. And one of the lines is throwing a headbutt at a guy when you have clearly lost the game. You shouldn't do that. I'm not a Caleb Love guy. That's who he headbutted, but you still shouldn't have done it. I don't care what Caleb said. I don't care if he said a yo mama joke or he made fun of your favorite NBA team or anything else. You can't let that happen. It was just a total meltdown. And then it eventually leads to BJ Freeman getting removed from the team. He was dismissed for detrimental conduct. Conduct detrimental to the team was the official phrasing that Bobby Hurley gave for it. He was gone. That's not the storyline that you would like to see if you are an ASU basketball fan. If you are an ASU sports fan, you don't want to see guys who are getting into fights, and you certainly don't want to see that they end up getting kicked off the team because it's detrimental. That's tough, man. And then the last thing, speaking of drama, and with everything that we've talked about, between the injuries, between suspensions, player getting kicked out, between a transition to a new conference, between the insane amount of talent on this team, this is arguably the biggest reason why this was the worst season in program history. They didn't finish games all year long. Typical of ASU, they started off very, very good in non-conference. They dominated non-conference. And then they get to the Big 12 and they go 4-12. And there was games that they should have won. Man. They were in a lot of games with the potential to get a win. Against Baylor, they should have won that. It went to overtime. Against number 3 Iowa State, that was a home game. You had them on the ropes for 35 minutes, and then you blew it. It was like a 15.5-point spread, and they got the spread in the last 5 minutes of the game. It was within 5 points pretty much the entire time. When you hosted Arizona, that was a close game before a complete meltdown and all of the drama ensued. When you played K-State, that was a 1-point loss. Texas Tech in Lubbock, double overtime, and they legitimately should have won that game. And then Utah, it just disappeared, man. Like, I understand they were not missing, and I almost had the BYU game on here too, the one that was in Tempe, not the one that they opened the year with, because it felt like that should have been a winnable game too, but they just can't keep up. They are a one-half team, and when things start to get out of hand, the shot selection is terrible, and they are just forcing things. They continue to be a rebounding team that does not rebound. They were out-rebounded, it felt like, every single game this year. Free throw shooting got a little better, was over 70%. That's a pretty big increase. But they didn't make the most of opportunities, and when crunch time came down, they folded. All year, you finish the regular season 4-12 in Big 12 play. Or was it, was it 4-16? Do I have that wrong? They were 4-16 in conference play. I think they were 4-16. Yep, all right, that's embarrassing. 1, 2, 3, that's embarrassing. 4-16 in Big 12 play. And they easily could have been right at that 500 mark with 2 ranked wins. Top 12 ranked wins over Texas Tech on the road and Iowa State, who at the time was number 3. Should have had those games. You should have beat K-State. You should have beat Baylor. That puts you with an 8-8 record. You had a toss-up with Utah. You had played BYU pretty tight for the most part. Things eventually got out of hand. I know that TCU was a close game. It really was not, in my opinion. And Arizona was a tight game right up until everything fell apart. They just couldn't do it. They couldn't close games. Oh, and one last thing. They sucked at home, man. In the Big 12, what do you think their record was? I'm going to spoil it for you. They were 1-9. 1 win at home. Colorado. Colorado is dead last in the conference. They are somehow worse than ASU. And if they played a third time, I don't know if ASU is getting the sweep. That's bad. Oh, yeah. 4-16. 2 of your wins were over Colorado, the worst team in the Big 12. Oh, my God, dude. That can't happen. That can't happen, especially at home. The inability to win games at home and close games. Close games. You just couldn't do it. All of this, the talent of the team, a chance to rewrite your image as a head coach in Bobby Hurley, your chance to rewrite your image as a basketball program in Arizona State with a new conference in the Big 12. And just this insane amount of drama that unfolded. The constantly blowing leads, the inability to keep up, the endless amount of injuries, the suspensions. A guy got kicked off the team and you couldn't win at home. When you take every single one of those factors into account, that is the reason why I personally believe this was undoubtedly the worst season in program history for the Sun Devils. And I know that some of you old heads out here who have seen decades worth of basketball, first of all, shout out to you guys for tuning in. I know a lot of you are my everydayers, and I appreciate you guys, especially. But I know that there's going to be a lot of comments, and I want to see comments of other teams that were worse than this team, whether you would say they're definitively worse or arguably worse. Let me know. But I just don't think there's any way that you can look at this season and say that it was just a bad season, just a terrible season, just a horrible season. This was a historically bad season. I said a season out of a nightmare before. It was a season out of hell for Sun Devils basketball. What did you guys think? Also, how many games did you watch this year? I don't blame you if you didn't watch any, but let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrads36. The podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. You'll get the update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. We are back on track, guys. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me through the highs and the lows. Tomorrow's show is a crossover edition with Locked On Kansas State. We are previewing ASU's likely only game in the Big 12 Conference. We got to talk about what the future might hold for this program, what to know about K-State, and much more. So make sure that you guys have your notifications on wherever you're getting your shows, video or audio, and I'll see you then. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.